Could current Yuji stop the Shibuya incident? Current predictions. What do we think? Could he do it? Me personally, I think he could if him and Gojo they were working in sync, they teamed up and they were doing that shit. I think that they would be unstoppable. I mean, dude, Yuji's speed blitzing the fuck out of Kenjaku, and he's not going to be able to open up the prison realm. But let's say they didn't work together, and Yuji had to stop. He had to fight off all these special grades by himself in his current state. I don't think Yuji would win because me personally, I don't think current Yuji. He may not even be stronger than Jogo. I'm sorry, and he's definitely not surviving against, like, let's say if Mahoraga came out of nowhere, because that's still happening. But Sukuna's just not there to stop it. Anyway, let me stop yapping. Let's get right into this video.
Could Yuji with all of his current abilities stop the Shibuya incident? Here's the scenario. Yuji meets someone with a time warp and curse technique, and gets sent back in time to October 31st. Don't get too stuck on the mechanics of it, this is all just a hypothetical. Yuji remembers everything that happened, and he has all of his current abilities, but everything else has been reset. The only difference is, he's replacing himself here. Could he stop the Shibuya incident from happening, or at least mitigate the effects of it?
What do y'all think is the first thing he goes to do? I think first thing he does, he's got to try to save Nanami and Nabara. I don't think he tries to save Gojo first. So he wouldn't even team up with Gojo. Gojo would be sealed before he can even do it. Oh yeah, I don't think he's going to survive a chance.
We'll take a look at his current mindset, powers, and the fact that he actually knows everything that's about to happen. This is part scaling, part what if, and part analysis of how he'd act. By the way, this video will have manga spoilers, up to around chapter 262. Since Yuji and Sukuna were already big parts of Shibuya, how should we handle that though? Does he overwrite the old Yuji and Sukuna? We'll assume that this version of Yuji just overwrites the other one. But what about Sukuna? That's a little bit tougher to do. So for this hypothetical, we'll say he's part of Yuji again. This also means the vow for Chain is active again. But everything else about Yuji is the same as him in the current arc. It's not logical, but for this hypothetical to work while retaining Yuji's powers,
Dude, is he gonna say Sukuna pops in Chain randomly? Because I don't think Sukuna would do it then and there. It was very strategical when he popped the Chain because Megumi was right there. I think Megumi was at that certain point where manga spoilers obviously, where Sukuna could take over Megumi's body, so I don't know if he would do it here.
Either have to use this workaround or have two Yujis running around in Shibuya. Naturally, he wants to prevent as much chaos as possible. Even with his current level of power, that will still be tough. There's too many people around and too many variables, and he can't be in multiple places at once. So, how would he handle this? We'll have him begin where he initially began. He entered Shibuya right where he did originally. First, he'd basically have to speedrun his original task. First, he'd fight Kogai, the Grasshopper Curse, which is really easy. But now he needs to decide where he wants to go next. Is it worth it to go straight for Gojo and save him? Well, first off, he doesn't know the specifics of the prison realm and how it was used here, because no one would have seen that to tell him. Even though he has knowledge of what's about to happen, he doesn't know exactly how it's going to go down. Plus, given the time frame of events, this would be really hard for him, especially without knowing the exact times of everything. Going there to save Gojo wouldn't be a guaranteed win. It might be too risky in Yuji's eyes. Even with Yuji basically having a head start here because he's going faster than normal, based on the time frames the art gave us, he would be cutting it really close.
I do think if he did want to help Gojo, obviously Yuji doesn't know this because he didn't know what happened, all he would have to do is stop him from having to use the 0.2 second domain, or stop Kenjaku from kind of paralyzing Gojo in place long enough for the prison realm to take effect.
At absolute latest, Gojo got sealed around 9:26 p.m. Yuji initially entered the curtain around 9:27 p.m. Even if he gets a few extra minutes somehow, there's no guarantee he gets there in time, and he would have to face the others too. And again, he doesn't know exactly what's going on there at exactly what times. It's too much of a risk, and for that reason, I think he'd just go down his original path. First, regrouping with Nanami and Megumi. I feel like with him weighing the options, he'd definitely go for the latter. If we had him sent back earlier in time, then yeah, he could have just gone to Gojo and helped prevent this entire thing from happening, with Gojo having knowledge of the prison realm being used to seal him, or even further back. But the point of this video is seeing how Yuji would act with his current moveset and his current mindset. Of course, if we send him back even further, yeah, he could just stop it from the get-go. But in my eyes, it's more interesting to go about it this way. So if he starts right where he actually began, then yeah, he's probably going to go down his original path, because he knows what actually happened to himself, and instead of going to Gojo, which could be really risky and might not even work, this way he can actually guarantee he could save others. And going after Gojo means he'll be facing bigger threats on his own. Maybe if he's lucky, Gojo will be able to help him, but it'll probably be too late by the time he gets there, and it puts everyone else at risk. When fighting Awasaka with Megumi, he'd know how to counter the inverse ability instantly. They could stay on top of the building to help out Ino, and this would help prevent Toji from being brought out too. Also,
yeah, but if you prevent Toji from being brought out, does that kill off basically Maki, Old Man Zenin, and Nanami, and Megumi? Toji was a necessary evil that they needed. He was the one who beated Dagon, so I wonder how he's going to tackle that.
this helps even further. The reason Megumi and Yuji separated in the first place is because Megumi had to help Ino. By now, he'd want to make his way to the station. He won't just have to go alone this time. Ino and Megumi would join him too.
What they gonna do? What Inu? I'm sorry, Ski Mask Sorcerer, love you to death, but you ain't doing shit against these special grades. Same thing with Megumi. Bros got packed up by Hirata. What is he doing?
Plus, taking down the Veil would be even easier. And with him regrouping with everyone, he could warn about Mahito and Jogo's presence, which is good for Nanami, who's probably going off on his own still. So right now, things are already better. Ino is in good condition. Toji hasn't been unleashed yet, and he won't be unleashed. Yuji has Megumi and Ino on his side right now. Next, he'd head to the station and have to fight Choso, of course. He definitely would not want to fight Choso here, especially given what happened in the recent chapters and all the other development with Choso. So that makes this a bit tricky because he has to settle this non-lethally. He could reveal the fact that they're brothers, and even utilize blood manipulation to prove it. This would raise a lot of questions for Megumi and Ino because when the hell did he get that? Yeah, that's another thing. This would be really confusing for everybody else around him.
Yeah, and they'd be like, yo, how did you get that scar across your face? Looks so, I don't remember you getting that. And he's just like,
How does Yuji know so much, and how does he have these new abilities? That could all be explained later at least.
I think Yuji would be honest with them. I don't think they would really question it too much. I mean, dude, we have fucking people. We have a demon that's like 1,000 years old that can summon flames and cut things from like 100 yards away. Are they really gonna question time travel?
So, best case scenario, this puts Choso on their side immediately, or the more likely scenario, Choso goes into a mental breakdown like
Or a more likely scenario, Choso has to be put in a mental institution because he absolutely loses his mind.
normal, realizing that Yuji is in fact his brother. Now, could he make it in time to help against Dagon? I'd think so. Megumi could help with the domain like usual, and they'd have the extra firepower from Yuji and Ino. There's a chance that they might even make it there before Dagon can pop a domain, which would be even better because they could stop him beforehand. But likely, I don't think there would be enough time for that, and by the time they get there,
Yeah, but Yuji doesn't have knowledge of Dagon in this situation. I don't know if he could. Also, I am not fully confident that Yuji could stop Dagon's domain. I don't like. Toji was a different animal. I don't know if Yuji can do that.
Dagon would awaken and have his own domain. On the bright side, they don't need to worry about Toji here. Yuji would be the main firepower against Dagon, and I feel like he'd be able to cook him here. Plus, if he gets injured at all by the Shikigami in the domain, he has blood stitching and reverse curse technique to help him heal. Not to mention, he has simple domain. It's not just his offensive abilities, he has great defensive abilities too. Other ways to buff himself and help him here. Once more, he confuses everybody, but it's a good thing. After stopping Dagon, he'll have to face Jogo. Also, Shigemo's running around nearby, so he might actually get involved here too. Not immediately, but he probably would be close enough considering the fact he was around when Megumi was fighting Toji. But at first, it's definitely just going to be Jogo alone. Thankfully, everyone's in much better condition, and as I mentioned before, since this version of Yuji is basically overwriting the past Yuji for the sake of this video, Sukuna's part of him, which means he's still a target for Jogo. And I know this whole hypothetical is confusing with Yuji replacing Yuji, and more specifically how that affects Sukuna, but I guess one way to make this work even better is to—
Ooh, hold on. I don't know if he kind of confirm this or not, but is it Sukuna from the Shibuya incident or is it Sukuna from the past with Yuji? Because that's two completely different things. Because he's going to go about it a little differently if he's Sukuna from the past, but for the sake of argument, let's say it's Sukuna from the Shibuya arc. I don't know. Does he try to take over Yuji's body during? I don't know.
say Sukuna's part of him but doesn't have all the fingers, which means Jogo would of course target Yuji. And it would be the same case too if we just assumed current Yuji completely overwrote the old Yuji, without Sukuna as part of him because Jogo wouldn't know that. So either way, if Sukuna's part of Yuji or not here, Jogo would be targeting him regardless of trying to feed him the fingers. And of course, Yuji would know this too. This could be used to his advantage. Jogo wouldn't want to kill Yuji, because killing Yuji kills Sukuna. He also would want to stop Jogo immediately. Jogo is way too fast and strong for the others to fight. But Yuji could definitely help, and with everyone else there, that really changes everything. Would Yuji be able to defeat Jogo outright? Well, he would know the—
Hell nah. Hell nah. Stop disrespecting my boy Jogo. It's pissing me the fuck off. Why has everyone and their mother been like, oh, you can't beat Jogo? No, the fuck he can't. What is he doing against Cole of the Iron Mountain or whatever his domain is called? What's he gonna throw 2 punches and he's gonna stop it? What? Nothing. He can do nothing against Jogo. If this man says Jogo can lose to Yuji, I'm gonna flip this table.
Risk of Jogo.
No, I'm really not. I have a Mac on this table. I got my phone. I got this camera. I got my hydro flask over here. These all cost a lot of money. I don't think I'm gonna flip my table.
And the extent of his power after Sukuna's fight with him. We can see in chapter 120 that Yuji experiences everything Sukuna does while he takes control of Yuji. He remembers every last detail. So even though he didn't actually fight Jogo himself, he knows exactly how that fight went because he saw what Sukuna did during that battle. Those memories are his memories too. Things are tricky here because Jogo's heat would 100% pose a threat, but in terms of raw physical power, Yuji's above him. There was even a supplemental page at one point that said if Jogo took 5 black flashes from Yuji, as well as a playful cloud strike from Todo, he would die instantly.
That's a big if. And I'm not a fan of, okay, if there's one character in the series that you can say, oh, he probably would land like 15 black flashes in this fight, obviously it's Yuji, but I don't like just giving that to the character because the black flashes were like this like 1 in a million thing that like a sorcerer can hit. I know Yuji has like mastered the art of black flashes, like, but don't like factor in that in and saying that he could probably do it consecutively against Jogo, that's giving him the benefit of the doubt.
And that's based on a much weaker Yuji. Even with Yuji's regular power, he definitely has this fight in the bag. But like, even if he pops off 1 black flash, he'll get in the zone and obliterate Jogo pretty quickly. Jogo's domain is definitely the biggest concern, but again, Yuji has simple domain. Although the ambient heat of it still is
I'm not a fan of simple domain. Yeah, it's necessary because domains are broken, but they're supposed to be broken. They're supposed to be your trump card. Dumbass simple domain. It pisses me off.
an issue. But the most important thing here is the fact that Jogo won't just go for the kill, which is great because he won't pop the domain and that protects everybody else around them too. Of course, Jogo is still strong enough to wash a lot of the people around him, but I don't think any of that will be a concern. Yuji will be able to stop him before he pops a domain, and that's if he even decides to pop a domain. Things are going really well by this point, and a lot of people have been saved too. Besides Megumi and Ino, Maki's fine, Nabito's fine, and Nanami's fine. They're all going to be in a much better condition. They're definitely still injured to an extent, depending on how the fight with Dagon went, but still, much better off than they were before. And most importantly, they're in fighting condition still. Also, after this, Yuji would drop a like on the video to support the channel. Why not join him?
Yeah, drop a like on the video. This is the W vid.
Likely this giant group wouldn't stick together. I'm sure Megumi and Yuji would stick together at least, and they'd probably go regroup with Nobara next as they make their way there. They definitely would run into Shigemo along the way, and luckily, Megumi wouldn't pull out Maharaga here. The two could definitely win against him. I don't know what the rest of the group would do, but I also feel it's not like them to all work together in a giant group like that. There is a chance that they could all go together, but I still feel they would split up here, and Yuji would definitely give them a lot of good info, at least to the extent of what he knows. Nobara's encounter with Shigemo still happens, so I don't know if she'd join Megumi and Yuji right away, and especially with them making such good time here, she still needs a little bit more extra time to recoup. But I think at this point, the next thing Yuji would do is try to stop Mahito in his tracks. I don't know if he'd have Megumi come along with him too, because Megumi would definitely be at risk here. So maybe he sticks with Nobara. This lets Yuji fight Mahito alone. And this fight would definitely be much simpler for him this time around. Not just in terms of power, but he'd be in such a better mental state too, because he would know that Nobara wasn't attacked by him, nor was Nanami killed by him. Still, Yuji does have all of his memories, and he definitely would be pissed off here. But thankfully, he's in a much more coherent state of mind, and he's not completely broken. Abilities-wise, he's completely aware of how to attack the soul. And he could 100% beat Mahito in this fight alone. He knows how it goes. He knows what Mahito's capable of. He's already an amazing counter for Mahito, and he's an even better one here.
Ooh, is Yuji a good matchup merchant? I feel like he might be. Like, dude, Mahito, Sukuna, he is the perfect counter to those two. I mean, just so happened, the one guy that can target a man's soul is fighting the two people that rely on the soul so much to basically be alive. It's a little, just saying, bro's not beating Jogo. Stop.
Especially with all the power he has. But killing Mahito does pose an issue. So right now there's only 2 threats left. Kenjaku and Uraume. Here's where things would really diverge. So we're going to give a couple hypotheticals for the situation. One scenario could be Uraume goes to fight Yuji alone. Sukuna's never unleashed, and of course Uraume wants to find him. In this scenario, right after fighting Mahito, Yuji would be fighting Uraume, potentially joined by Nobara and Megumi as well. What would the outcome of this fight be? Personally, I think even if it's Yuji alone, he could beat Uraume. It's not going to be easy by any means. It will definitely be very difficult.
Damn, too bad we don't know how strong Uraume is at all because we saw none of her fight with Hikari. That's one thing I hope the anime does. They should extend the Hikari versus Uraume fight.
Even if Megumi and Nobara are there, it still would be difficult. However, this isn't a normal fight. Uraume would not want to kill Yuji here because of Sukuna being part of him. This weird Yuji overriding Yuji scenario is actually pretty important for this aspect, because Sukuna still being part of him means Uraume would hold back. If going for the kill, Uraume would be a much bigger threat, but because of the sole fact that Sukuna is part of Yuji still, his chances of winning go up significantly. And that doesn't even consider the fact that he's not alone, although he'd definitely be the one doing the most work here. Uraume wants to unleash Sukuna, and killing Yuji wouldn't do that. That would get rid of Sukuna. And this scenario would be great because later on, Kenjaku would appear completely alone. We'll get more into that later. The second scenario is that by the time Kenjaku appears, Uraume is with him, pretty much like how it went normally. In this scenario, there's two questions, and that'll decide how the battle goes. 1. Does Kenjaku stay and fight here, or does he go with the plan B? And 2. If he stays, does he fight alongside Uraume, or do they fight separately?
Kenjaku dipping? Are you really think Kenjaku's gonna stick around when he's... No.
If Kenjaku does nothing at first or just leaves, again, Uraume's cooked. Especially with being outnumbered, I don't see Uraume doing much here. Especially with all the people able to break through the ice, like Yuji and Choso, who's going to be there at this point, as well as Yuki, whose curse technique would be perfect for breaking through ice. If Kenjaku's fighting with Uraume, that's going to be really tough, and I can't see this happening. So to sum up, there's 4 scenarios. 1. Uraume fights Yuji first, and everyone encounters Kenjaku later. 2. Uraume and Kenjaku appear together, but they fight separately. 3. Uraume and Kenjaku are together and they fight together. And scenario 4, Kenjaku goes off on his own with some sort of plan B, taking the prison realm with him. The first scenario is definitely the best. It would definitely be an issue if Uraume and Kenjaku fight together. Uraume isn't weak by any means. Uraume is actually incredibly strong, but if Uraume is fighting with Kenjaku, then that makes things really bad, because Uraume could be a really powerful support. This is definitely the worst case scenario. An ideal scenario would be Uraume's defeated first, whether in scenario 1 or scenario 2, and then everyone has to fight Kenjaku together. By this point, Yuji's probably going to be a bit gassed too. Sure, he'll fight through the pain, but I think in terms of stamina, he'll start to feel the effects here. A lot of this fight is really circumstantial because first of all, it depends on how Kenjaku would act, and second of all, what types of curses he has at his disposal. And third, your perception of how this fight would go. Let me know what you think below. I know at this point of the video would probably be very contentious, but I think power-wise, ability-wise, the fact that they outnumber Kenjaku, and the
I think he was right. As his first take, Kenjaku's not sticking around. Kenjaku's not gonna fight all of these sorceries. And let's say he does, and he does stick around, he's not winning. I mean, dude, all these people. He barely won against Choso and the girl. Oh, I'm so sorry, I forgot her name. I'm really bad with names, guys. Please don't hate me in the comments. But he barely won against them, and then you add like Prime Yuji and everyone else there, he's not winning.
fact that Yuji has some sort of foresight about what his abilities are like, thanks to the knowledge he traveled back in time with, there is definitely a chance, even though it's a really tough battle. Whether or not it's a slim chance or a big chance, I'll let you guys decide that. With how many ways that fight could go, frankly, I can't say one way or the other. It could go so many different ways. I feel there would definitely be a fight here, and Kenjaku would of course be the last obstacle. Although scenario 4 is likely too, with Kenjaku going to find some plan B. Like maybe he just doesn't fight here at all, which means everybody survives. But that also means he leaves with Gojo, which might actually be a good thing, because everyone could try and make a plan to fight Kenjaku later on. Instead of having to face him right now on the spot, they could plan ahead. And I know, most of the group here isn't going to be doing much of value, but also consider the fact that a lot more people are here than before, including a lot more useful fighters. Make fun of Megumi all you want, he's got some good abilities. Nobara's solo attacks would be pretty helpful. Nanami's really strong on his own, especially with him being in overtime here. Todo won't have the new version of Boogie Woogie, but he'll have both arms so he could still use it perfectly fine here. And he didn't fight Mahito here. He'd be at full health and stamina. So again, let me know below what you think. Of those scenarios, which is likely? And I think with scenario 4, there's also the chance that Uraume fights regardless and Kenjaku just leaves on his own, so that's a possibility. But there are a lot of variables at this point, especially with how you want to consider the Kenjaku fight to go, because there are 2 more things I want to mention. For one, if Mahito is killed before Kenjaku can absorb him, he won't have idle transfiguration, which also means he can't transfigure people into modern day sorcerers for the Cullen game. So this avoids a lot of headache with that, but it does introduce an interesting issue.
Wow, I didn't even realize this. So Shibuya is just a domino effect for the rest of the series. That's pretty cool.
Would Angel incarnate? In chapter 136, Kenjaku explains how some people had techniques awakened and some became vessels. Supposedly, Hana would have been empowered to be Angel's vessel here, because Kenjaku was essentially the catalyst that made it happen. Hana had already ingested whatever cursed object would make her be Angel's vessel, but it sounds like Angel wouldn't have actually incarnated until this moment, which is an issue because how would they free Gojo from the prison realm? Also, the second thing I want to address, the elephant in the room. What about Sukuna? He's been gone this entire time. Can't he just use Enchain at whatever point he wants to take over Yuji's body? Like, maybe he does it against Jogo to get a hold of the fingers, or he does it in the final battle to take advantage of the chaos. For the latter, that also goes back to the hypothetical about how Kenjaku and Uraume act. But before any of that even happens, one thing to keep in mind is the fact that Sukuna can't hurt anyone while he controls Yuji. Sure, he could hurt Yuji, and you might think, oh, why not just take over Megumi at this point? Well, I doubt that would happen, and if he did try that, it wouldn't really go well for him. Sukuna had explained before that Megumi could have been another cage for him, and without crushing Megumi's spirit, he couldn't guarantee full control. This all happened later on when he saw Sumiki again, or rather Yorzu, and then witnessed the fight between her and Sukuna. But none of that happens here. So trying to take over Megumi would be a really risky move. There is no guarantee he'd have full control, and for that reason, I don't think he would try to take over Megumi here. And taking control of Yuji would also not amount to much unless he helps Uraume and Kenjaku kidnap him or something. And that would still be tough with everybody around, and the fact that Sukuna couldn't fight back thanks to the vow. Back to what I said about Jogo though. This is really the only time I feel
Yeah, but what if Sukuna says he didn't want to be in New Jersey on Sunday mornings, and then he broke the vow with Yuji not being able to hurt anyone, and then he just kills everyone? Peak cinema. Hey! Yo, let me write JJK manga.
Sukuna would even entertain the idea of swapping, just to get a hold of the fingers and to try and further control Yuji. Although, after the minute is up, Yuji would probably just contain him again. So originally in Shibuya, he'd just awaken on his own after being fed the fingers. But here it would be completely different because he'd be using Enchain, which would mean he just has the minute of control and he can't hurt anybody else. That's why I didn't touch upon this part until now, because I think there's a really big chance that
Is this physique natty achievable?
Sukuna just doesn't do anything here. His best option would be to further bide his time. It would be risky to try anything else. Especially because once he does this, they'll know he could do it again. On top of that, part of the vow is that Yuji would forget about this agreement with Sukuna. So how do we handle this? When Yuji's sent back in time, does he forget about this again? Of course, this is all up to me and how I handle the hypothetical. Like,
Nope, definitely does not, because someone definitely told them about
if
it.
he remembers this, obviously it's not a problem. But even if we assume he forgets this, Yuji would have to fill in the blanks for his new memories. It's not like he would forget Sukuna controlling Megumi. He just wouldn't know how it happened. Even if we assume that in this hypothetical convoluted scenario, Yuji forgets about this vow again, he would remember bits and pieces of it regardless, and might reach the conclusion of how it happened. Or at least, he would get pretty close. At absolute worst, he'd be very wary of Sukuna taking control at any time, if that's possible. So, what now? What's the outcome here? Worst case scenario, Kenjaku leaves with Gojo, and they suffer some losses, mainly in the fight with Kenjaku. Best case scenario, every threat is stopped, and for the most part, everybody makes it out fine, although Gojo is sealed. And they would have to find a way to unseal him without Angel's help, or they'd have to find a way to make Angel incarnate somehow. On the upside, Yuta would eventually show up too, and without Sukuna being unleashed, he wouldn't be appointed executioner for Yuji. Everyone's goal at this point would be to free Gojo. So back to the original question, could Yuji stop the Shibuya incident? Well, kinda. For the most part, he does. There is the fact that we made a huge hype.
Yeah, he definitely does. There's just one major thing that's out of his control, and it's Gojo getting sealed, and I don't think you send back anyone that isn't named Gojo, they're not stopping that.
Hypothetical with how Yuji and Sukuna would be involved here, so it's based on all of this. I think with his current abilities, knowledge, and mindset, he could save a ton of people, but at the cost of Gojo getting sealed, and likely being stuck like that. I don't think it's completely hopeless. I assume there is some way to free him, or at the very least empower Angel, but that is something to consider. And at the end of the arc, a lot of it is up to what Kenjaku does here, and how you'd interpret that fight too. Does Kenjaku fight? Does he do it alone? Does he fight with Uraume? Does he fight with Gojo? Does Kenjaku kill them? Does he lose? There are a lot of different outcomes that are all pretty likely. So Yuji did stop the massive destruction and widespread death, but not Gojo's sealing. And there definitely still are losses, but it's on a much smaller scale than before. And in terms of his colleagues, many more of them will survive, maybe all of them. On top of that, he might have even stopped the Culling game in the process depending on how this ends. Stopping this whole arc could stop a lot of other stuff in the future. It could also go very badly and cause Gojo to be permanently sealed, with Kenjaku maybe finding some way to pull ahead here, depending on his backup plans or how he fights at the end. Towards the end, it definitely gets a lot muddier, given all the different ways these various characters could realistically act here. But for everything before that, and especially for the earlier parts, I'm very confident that Yuji can make the outcome so much better than it was originally. And obviously if he went back any earlier, he'd be able to verify Mechamaru's info too and probably stop the event in its entirety, as well as saving Mechamaru too. and preventing Gojo from being sealed. But sending him back to the exact point where I sent him back to is a much more interesting discussion in my opinion. Like I said before. Let me know what you think below.
WVid. All right, show this guy some love. Salad Bar, like the video. Show him some love. Damn, it's not that popular of a video. You guys should go like and comment. You better freaking subscribe right now. Are you serious right now? You're not even subscribing. You watch this entire video, dude. Go subscribe.